Every participant in this democratic process must fight this, because it will take us 2.5 decades back.
The one has seen and rise and peace. I don't tell you now. Since I say peace, I want to destroy this country. We could not destroy her. The one has seen and a super story. The main gist they come. Anyway, obedient. Watch them and share the video.
By the DSS.
It's the first plenary session of the week in the House of Representatives. Days after the Department of State Security Service issued a warning of alleged plots to install an interim government in the country following the outcome of the presidential election, a member of the House is worried and does not believe that the threats should be taken lightly.
Mr. Speaker, interim government is unknown to our laws. Interim government is undemocratic. Interim government is not something that we should support. Taking into consideration that our democracy is a young one. At this point, I think it is our duty to do everything within our strength to support the current democracy that we are enjoying, to strive and then stay.
His concerns are shared by other lawmakers who condemn totally the idea of an interim government.
Every participant in this democratic process must fight this, because it will take us 2.5 decades back. What do I mean by that? It's even speculative. Yes, it's speculative, it can be true, but how it will work, there could be a lot of bloodshed.
We should ask our people back home to stop comments that are hurting, to stop comments that are destroying our polity. What are you ranting for? Elections have been held. If there are infractions that you feel, go to court.
The security agencies should...
In further debate in the matter, one lawmaker berates the security agencies for failing to do their jobs, while another accuses former President Olusegun Obasanjo of culpability.
Is it not a shame that the security agents will come out and say they have the names of people that have muted this type of government in this country? You will not arrest them to prosecute them. You are wasting our precious time telling us to condemn it.
The first attempt at suggesting this interim was by our erstwhile president, General Olusegun Obasanjo. In the letter he wrote to Mr. President, condemning this free and fair election of 2023 and asking Mr. President to find a way of cancelling without going to court.
To get his views on recent developments in the political and legal space. I began our conversation with his views on the recent indictment and arraignment of former President Donald Trump vis-a-vis the rule of law and what lessons Nigeria can learn from it.
There's a lot we can learn, especially on the question of rule of law, because we like to borrow from the West, but we don't have the culture of follow-through on what we have borrowed. It's not usual here. If we can take care of corruption, because there is an inverse relationship between corruption and rule of law. You can never have rule of law where you have corruption reigning supreme. So if we can handle the problem of corruption, then it could be possible for a policeman to arrest a former president. Because when a president is in office, you can't arrest him. He has that immunity that we created into our constitution. But out of office, even if it's an ordinary traffic violation. But the problem is that here, we're not even talking about former president or former governor. Anybody can do you know who I am? And get away with it. A friend of mine said he was being arrested by a policeman for running the red light, and he parked, and the policeman came, and all he did was to say, hey, you want to arrest me or you want to have breakfast? And the policeman said, breakfast, sir. He said, I gave him breakfast and I went on. Just like that. So, not to talk about a former president that you cannot go near to go and arrest and subject himself and bring himself forward. And you don't, because we must also put things within their perspective. Trump is not an easy person to deal with. All those having to surround his house in order to get the documents and whatever shouldn't be the case in a place like United States. He should be saying, come over, come and take everything you need, like Biden did, but that's not your Trump. So instead of waiting for them to deploy National Guards and FBI and all the rest of it, he surrendered, which are the things we don't have here. Or much of Africa that we could, if we are using their constitutional arrangement, then we need to start dealing with why are we not able to be transparent in getting people to be accountable.
Let's come back home to Nigeria and our recently concluded elections. What lessons, if any, do you think that we can learn from that?
There are so many things about our recent elections that it will be difficult to know where to start from in terms of the lessons, because a major portion of our past election is a recurrent decimal, the politicization of ethnicity. And that politicization of ethnicity is, in the large part, across the board. Across the board. Those who can shout loudest are shouting about Lagos. But it's not a problem of Lagos. It's a national problem that Professor Ehosa Osage, Professor Kudiba Onoli, all of them have pointed to on the problem of politicization of ethnicity and as the recurring decimal in what's probably more unfortunate in this current immediate past election was the adding of religious identity into the process of election. Today, the Pentecostals are the most fundamentalists. You people search for fundamentalists among Muslims. No, that's not where the problem is. The problem is with the Pentecostalists, because the issue. No, my own view. The issue that they made about Muslim ticket. What you call the vice president is a spare tire. And in some cars, you may never even use the spare tire for the life of the car, especially in places like Nigeria where you pick nails all the time. And so what was the big deal that drove into church? Take back your country. So if we want to move forward, then we have to start emphasizing associational group interests as opposed to primordial group interests.
Let's talk about the courts. The Nigerian judiciary has come under some attacks in recent times from politicians and their supporters since the conclusion of the elections. Some people justify these attacks on recent controversial judgments given by the courts, especially the Supreme Court. What are your thoughts about that one? Do you think that the judiciary, do you think that these attacks are justified?
I, as a lawyer, cannot contest a Supreme Court judgment when it has been finally rendered. Of course, you can do analysis that also shows respect to that institution. So, in effect, we can take any of the judgment. I found some of them curious myself, that how could it end up be this way, but at the end of the day, the spirit is as the court pleases. And in that respect, we do not have an alternative arrangement. By the 1999 Constitution, the buck stops at the Supreme Court. So whatever panel they put together, we have to support and wait for that decision, as opposed to the effort of some of our people in trying to delegitimize the Supreme Court. All those unnecessary cacophony over the Chief Justice of Nigeria went to London. Should he no longer travel? But people conjure the fact that he was on wheelchair. And then they called that a disguise. They didn't say there was a mask on his face. It was a selective choosing of words in order to delegitimize the Supreme Court. But we aren't going to get any answer out of all this. If you are not as lucky as some, and you are still able to stand on your feet very strongly, many people immediately, even once they see your age in some of those advanced countries, not here where you have to bribe to get a wheelchair, they will come at you. Do you need help? To drive you around the big airports and whatever. So what is wrong about the Chief Justice of Nigeria? And they started linking the person that went to London 10 days before the president-elect went to France. And they were trying to make a link between Paris and London. Just without, in all these passing off arrangements, all aimed at delegitimizing the judiciary before it even got there.
Prof, let's round off talking about the Nigerian Constitution and the amendments that we have seen. Do you think that it satisfies the restructuring agenda?
Well, I have fundamental problems with the 1999